Welcome to 1 Million Cent, the podcast where we equip you to share Jesus.
Hey, 1 million cent, 1 million cent. Get untrained and equipped 100%. 1 million cent, 1 million cent. Get untrained and equipped like 100%.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I am so excited for today's episode. I have a recent friend of mine, but somebody I've known of for a while. We had a mutual connection through another friend. Got to hang out. Actually did a podcast together over in the DFW Metroplex. And from that time, I was like, hey, we got to connect, get you on our podcast. And a little over a year later, here we are. So here we are, man. So Joshua Broome, man, thanks for being on here, man. You doing all right today?
Yeah, really good. Really
Awesome,
good. Glad
man.
to be here. Yeah.
Dude, so thankful, so thankful. I know you're traveling all over the country. I know we're going to hit a little bit about that in a little bit. But, man, I'm so thankful for your ministry, God's redemption in your life and your story that I believe needs to be told.
Sure.
I know it's always needed to be told, but in our day and time, and I think it's so crucial. So thank you for being here. For those of you that are listening today, I want to let you just give you a heads up, man. We're going to talk about some real subjects. So listen, if you're not ready to just hold on to your chair a little bit, you better be, because, we'll hit some things that need to be said. And sin doesn't like to be drug out into the light.
Sure.
And so I want to make sure y'all know that. Just a heads up, if you happen to be a teenager, young teenager, you might want to, hey, have your dad, have your mom watch this or listen to this with you, whichever one. So, but I hope that today's episode will bring hope in an area that is a very big stronghold in many people's lives.
I would say if it's not the greatest problem, even within the church, I would say if it's not number one, it's a close number two.
It's a close, for sure. So on that, man, let's just go ahead and say, Josh, why don't you share a little bit of your story? And as he shares his story, y'all grasp a little bit about what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in South Carolina, and what was unique about my story was that unfortunately, it's not unique in this day and time that I grew up without a dad. Like, that's an unfortunate normative thing in Western culture. But what was unique about my circumstance was that the dad that I didn't have in my home or in my life was just down the street.
Wow.
And he was in close enough proximity, and the town was small enough that I would literally see him at the one gas station we had, the one grocery store we had. So as I was young, it was confusing, and as I got older, it was frustrating.
So you're talking about your real biological
my biological
dad.
dad.
Not in your life, but in your life.
Yeah, right. I mean, he was there.
Yeah.
And I think, so there was no malicious intent on his part.
Sure.
I think, in retrospect, looking at it through the lens of empathy, it's like, man, my mom had me when she was 15. Got pregnant with me when she was 15, had me at 16. He was the same age. So going through that as a teenager, I can't imagine the confusion and the fear, and there's so many things associated with that, and just the way that sin works, or just a complicated situation works.
Right.
The longer it festers, the more complicated it gets. And I could just see, as I got older and time, passed by, that conversation that he didn't want to have became more complicated and more shameful in his own life. I definitely have a lot of empathy for him today. But, when I was a kid, I was pretty frustrated.
Yeah. I can only imagine, man.
And, just being someone who, I was, someone who is highly involved in sports and like a lot of things. Being in a town that was super small, like someone not having their dad at their games,
big deal.
There was no one else that I knew that didn't have their dad.
That wasn't normal in your day,
right?
Yeah.
I graduated with like 95 people,
right?
And 94 of them had their dads at their events,
Man.
And as I got older, being someone who's like a high achiever, that's a good thing. If you have a high achiever personality, it drives you to operate in excellence and, have great work ethic and do good work. Like, those things all honor God and are beautiful. But, through the lens of sin and under the understanding that, I was believing the lie that if I did enough and earned enough, I would feel enough.
Wow.
And that's really the lie of the world believing you can create your own autonomy and find your own approval And if we're not operating from the fact that we're approved because Jesus has died on the cross for us, and we can live from the fact that he's done that, if we're striving on the other side of that, we're going to feel empty and lonely and frustrated. But that's, that was my story.
Yeah.
And that, that took me into high school, started modeling and acting, had success in that. And that was my new like dopamine hit of choice, where if I had the success, I would feel successful. But man, what was sad was that it didn't matter how many good jobs or, I got the part or whatever, or, even the fact that, I was basketball was my sport.
Yeah.
And having the ball with my, having the ball in my hands at the end of the game meant that the coach trusted me, and I cared more that he wanted me to have the ball in my hands that I made the shot.
Come on. Yeah, that's so.
Because what I desperately wanted was the affirmation of, a man saying that he was proud of me.
Wow.
I desperately wanted to hear, son, I'm proud of you. And because I didn't hear that, I searched the world trying to find something that was, even if it was counterfeit, if it felt the same, maybe it would make me feel the same.
Yeah, hey, I want to pause right there and let you continue your story. But those of y'all that are listening right now, especially, man, teenagers, and on the flip side of that, dads, I need you to hear that. The thing you longed for the most was a dad saying, I'm proud of you, another man saying, I'm proud of you. And we're going to see it took you to links that, you probably never thought you would have gone or ever ended up there. Certainly. And so as men of God, let me just pause for a second and just give this encouragement. Hey, take inventory as you're listening of your life. And here's the thing. I want this encouragement to help you take a step today. I don't want it to crush you today. I want you to help you take a step back, a step out into that, to speaking life, speaking love into your children's lives. And so I just had to pause there and say that because my mom and dad divorced when I was 2, grew up with an incredible stepdad, did every other weekend with my biological father. So I really did have, dads in my life. But there's just nothing like looking up in the stands and seeing your dad there. You're like, that's my
and it's so wild because like the glimmers of hope and the seasons of rest that I did have, it was because of Coach B. He was my basketball coach. To this day, like I gave him some love in my book where like he was the one person that loved me enough to call me out and call me up because we all need that. And I had, 2 groups of people where it was like there were people who were patting me on my back for me doing things, and then I had people patting me on my back because they felt sorry for me.
Wow, yeah.
But that's like good. I wanted the person that believed that I had more inside of me that I wasn't expressing.
Yeah, I love it, man.
But
so you're looking for that approval.
Yeah.
You're in high school, maybe beyond now.
So I started modeling and acting when like 13, 14, and pretty much at the same.
Dude, that's young.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like this was back in the day. So it was like walking through a mall with my mom.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like the model search or whatever.
Right. Yeah, dude.
And she was like, "You got great teeth. I can I can get you like
you still
set
got
up
great
with, like,
teeth, man. If y'all ain't watching this episode, this dude's got go ahead, man.
Colgate, holler at your boy.
That's right.
But yeah, I started doing modeling and acting, but around the same season is when I was at my cousin's house and I saw pornography for the first time.
Wow, yeah.
And average age of exposure 3 years ago was 11. It's trending down towards 8 years old.
Wow.
And 84% of the time when people are exposed to pornography under the age of 15, it was incidental or secondhand exposure, meaning that they were on an unprotected device looking for something normal and they found something extremely abnormal, and or someone showed it to them. That's they were at a sleepover, they were at a friend's house, they were at school even, and someone showed it to them. But because I didn't have a healthy dynamic at home, because I didn't have a visual representation of what intimacy looked like in any capacity,
right?
That's why Romans 12:2 is so important. You're either being conformed by the world or being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I was most certainly being conformed by the world because it was the only thing teaching me.
Yeah.
And never had the sex talk, never had anything like that. Yeah. So that was now my visual expression of what it meant to interact with a guy and a girl in that way. So all of a sudden I started replicating what I saw, and just the neuroscience around the mirror neurons, like in a kid's brain. It's really impactful. That's why pornography is so destructive, because you're literally seeing something, you're experiencing an emotion that was beautiful and God designed for, a man and wife in one marriage for one lifetime. But when you see something outside of its context, you start to, have these bubbling up of emotions that you don't understand.
Yeah.
And I was wanting to feel loved. I was wanting to be seen. And I started, being really promiscuous throughout high school and then college. Go to college, study theater. Again, trying to equip myself to be successful so that I can hear more good jobs.
Man. Yeah.
And drop out of college the second semester of my sophomore year and thought like, okay, I've got enough knowledge. I've equipped myself enough. I just need to be in closer proximity to the industry I want to be in. So I moved to Hollywood. And I didn't move there like completely blind. Had talked with an agent. She said, if you move here, I'll represent you. So moved there, have representation, doing okay. It's like I wanted to act, but I was having more success modeling, but like having some success acting. I was doing like, there's like A films and B films. I was doing like some C films where like I was holding my own boom, like if I wasn't in the shot. But
I love that.
But I was loving it. And, most people that are in a place like that, chasing their dream, you got to do something to mitigate your expenses. So I'm working at this restaurant.
Okay.
And so I'm 22 at this point. And these three girls walk up to me, and they, I'm working in a place where it's advantageous for people who are in the industry because, you're on Sunset Boulevard in the middle of West Hollywood, so you're in the precipice of everything going on. So it's a really great place to network, and it's one of those places where, like, to work there, you didn't provide a resume, you provided a headshot. Because it was just that's the type of space it was. Because they were just people coming in there all the time, and the probability of you having this interaction that led to you getting a part or an opportunity or a conversation was high.
Yeah.
So when these three girls walked in, they asked me like, "Hey, would you consider acting?" And I was like, "Oh, yes." Like, perfect.
Glad you asked.
Yeah. And very quickly they pivoted. They're like, "Well, we're talking about pornography." And I was like, man, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
And so they were essentially headhunters.
So they were recruiting out.
Yeah, because I mean, their job was just like the way headhunting works is an organization will send people out to find potential leads for people that can contribute to their business, and if they find someone where there's a tangible ROI, there's a tangible a success in their lives, they're compensated a fee for finding someone that can do the job.
Yeah.
And so that's what they were doing. They were, looking for guys and girls that were attractive, that had charisma, that that maybe they were broken enough where they would say yes to that. And they used the language of, "Hey, do you want to meet with our agent? He's at this studio." So I'm like, it sounds like a terrible idea, but my curiosity got the best of me.
For sure.
So I'm like, I'll meet with him. Like, what harm could it?
Right.
And I'm thinking like, what? Like the presuppositions I had in my head around like pornography were like, if I go to this like Motel 6 and this like old weird guy is pulling lint out of his belly button, I'm out.
That's right. Yeah.
But it was in Studio City, and the place was adjacent to Universal Studios, and it was this beautiful complex. And I walk in, and everything is as if it would be in a traditional audition. Like I walk in, there's a receptionist. I'm waiting to speak to the guy. I walk in, I sit down, and he's got this like 3-piece suit on, like big fat double Windsor tie. He's an English guy, and he asked me 3 questions. He was like pretty upfront, and he asked me 3 questions. He said, "How did I grow up? What was I doing in LA? And what did I hope to accomplish?" And like again, like in retrospect, thinking about someone who wants to manipulate people and find someone who is easily coerced, he's looking for ammunition.
So he needed that information.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I grew up just pretty much me and my mom. Okay, and he's like, okay, great. They come from a broken home.
Wow.
What are you doing? Like, what am I doing in LA? Like modeling and acting. Okay, like that's so most people that move out there, they're looking to be in this creative space, this different atmosphere. They're looking for something they don't have. Pretty normal. And thirdly, interesting, I say the most interesting, I said I wanted to be famous. And what's so interesting about that is like being famous or being rich, they're not, if it's not measurable, it's not attainable. And like thinking about that, it's like, well, what equates to being famous? You know, how many followers do you need to be famous? How many movies do you need to star in to be famous? You know, well, like they're like whatever metric you might set, probably when you achieve it, you're not going to feel the satisfaction that you hoped. And you're just going to say, well, maybe just a little more. Same thing with money. It's like, well, if I make $1 million, I'll be happy. Well, I don't feel happy when I made $1 million. Well, if I made a little more, or a little more.
Was that Rockefeller who said that, right?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, how much is enough? A little bit more, right?
Right.
A little bit more.
And it's so true. Wow. And, you know, and I was saying, hey, I wanted to be famous, but what I meant was that I wanted to feel seen.
Wow.
I wanted to be loved.
Yeah, stop right there, dude. That's golly, I can't tell, you know, in our day and time now, social media, right? You want to be an influencer. I hear students say, I want to be an influencer, a podcaster, I want to be a YouTuber, or whatever. And if we had to boil it down to a lot of what that means is just what you said. I just want to be seen. Yeah. Because apparently in the, go ahead, man. That's, golly.
Yeah, and I think there's a drastic difference because, you know, God is doing an incredible work on social media, and there's nothing that Jesus is not Lord over.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think, you know, you can most certainly do a good thing for the wrong reason. And I think, you know, if God has granted you with the ability to have influence, know that the ability to be influential is not to point people to you, is to point people to Him.
Come on, there you go. That's good, man.
Yeah, I mean that's if you miss that. You
miss it all.
Yeah,
even if you get it all, you'll miss it all, right? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world?
Yeah,
to lose forfeit his own soul, right?
Yeah.
So this guy asked you 3 questions. In this interview.
Yeah, and then he was like, you know, I'll give you everything your heart desires. You know, I'll give you, you know, you're a good looking guy. You know, you've got acting experience. You got all this stuff, so you'll make all this money. You'll be the guy. You'll be famous. Everyone will know your name, which is so interesting. He said everyone will know your name, yet the very next conversation we had was like, if you do this, you don't go by your name. You actually surrender your name and you go by a pseudonym, which in itself points to the fact that there's shame associated with it. Because if you can dissociate your identity from what you're doing, then you will compromise in a way that you didn't, you know, think you would. In the same way, consuming pornography, what you're saying is that person on a screen is a product, and that sex that is happening is transactional. So I can dissociate and objectify a person on a screen, and you're ignorant and so deceived if you believe that's not going to have a real carryover in your real life. Yeah, because I mean, I'd love to talk about this. I think like there's a few things associated with it that I'm so passionate about, but it robs you of your inability to be a good friend. Because if you believe that relationships are transactional and you don't believe that people have intrinsic value, then the moment that you can't do something for me, I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to text you back. Right. You know, I'm not going to do something when you need it. You know, our relationship is based upon what you can do for me, because I'm used to extracting value from a screen, so I'm used to extracting value from people. But I'm in that conversation, and he tells me all that, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do one. What could it hurt? Maybe I'll do one film, and I do it, and it's everything that I didn't think it would be, and whatever I thought it would be, it wasn't. Wow. Felt disgusting afterwards. You know, we got paid like $500 for the first one, and wow. Just like literally felt like there's this scene that like when I saw it, I wept and wept and wept. There's this movie, Redeeming Love, that, you know, it's one of the, oh my gosh, Andy, what's his last name? Irwin. It's one of the Irwin brothers. Okay. They put it out. So Kingdom Studios, but it's this movie where this girl's essentially saved from prostitution, but then she gets married and finds this guy, and she's trying to live this normal life, but she can't reconcile that she is removed from her situation because she feels like she is her past, she is her shame, and she goes back into that lifestyle, and she regrets it so much. She's in this river, and she's scrubbing her body with rocks, literally trying to like tangibly wash off the shame that she felt inside. And it's like, gosh, like it's such a picture that, number one, our brokenness will lead us into a place that is chaos, even though we've been delivered from it. And, you know, I could preach on like that. And like numbers like 13 and 14, it's like, man, like the Israelites have been delivered from, Egypt, and they send this 12 spies in, and they're like, everything's there that you said there would be, but there's these fortified walls and these giants. So let's go back to slavery.
Can we go back to slavery?
Like, don't mind, the plagues or the Red Sea or the manna from heaven or the water from the rock.
Or the fact that they want to kill all of us. Let's go back.
Don't mind all that. Let's go back to the chaos, because chaos is what I knew the longest. So it's the place that I find the most comfort.
Wow.
But yeah. And so that happens, and I do it. And it blows up my life. So I do one movie, it blows up my life. So this is 2006. So even in 2006, something getting 500,000 views is like crazy viral.
Yeah.
And so like people find out all of a sudden, like my mainstream agent finds out. I get a phone call for her. We sit down and like, hey, this is 2006. This is not today. So like, very different world. So she sits me down like, hey, we can't be associated with anyone that's doing this. We can't represent you anymore. So sorry.
So you lost that immediately.
Yeah. So fired. And then even worse, I get a phone call from my mom. She's like, I heard through the grapevine, living in a small town, it only takes one person to know one thing for everyone to know everything about you.
Yeah.
And I just had this like humiliating conversation with my mom, and she's just like, I raised you better than that. Like, why did you do that? Like, we worked so hard, and we did. Because between acting and modeling and basketball, we were like, there was a time in our lives where, like food stamps, government housing, and somehow I had J's on my feet. And it was because my mom was working 80 hours a week.
Wow. Man.
And so like I let her down, and I knew that I lost everything we were working towards. Yeah. And I think it's such an important place to kind of like stop and kind of like see. There's going to be, John 16:33, like there's going to be stuff that happens, there's going to be tribulation that happens in your life.
Right.
And if you allow it, there's reactionary behavior and there's responsive behavior. So reactionary behavior is I'm going to let a person or a circumstance dictate how I respond.
Yeah.
Responsive behavior, there's something greater that I stand on, that in spite what happens, I'm committed to a foundation that's bigger than me or a person or a feeling or a circumstance. But for me, I believed that because I did that, there was nothing else I could do but to continue to do that. And that's the way that compromise works in your life, kind of like the way that Jesus talks about yeast and bread, a little yeast ruins the whole batch. And if you don't understand that some compromise in your life is going to lead to more compromise in your life, you're really missing it. But it was so much easier for me to continue doing what I've done than, okay, I can't do what I want to do. But I was 22. I could have literally did anything else.
Right. But the enemy.
But it felt, because my shame became my identity, and that's the power of shame.
Wow.
Because like that's the difference of shame and guilt. Like shame is I am my sin. Guilt is I feel conviction because of my sin. But I was like, well, there's nothing else I can do. And right in the middle, Satan speaks his lies, and the agent the agent from the pornography industry calls me. He's like, hey, I'd love to offer you a long-time contract. I think you'll do amazing in this industry. So I said yes to that.
Because you lost everything else.
Yeah. And I believed the lie, because
that's right.
That's the most dangerous thing about a lie. I mean, that's essentially like, what's my book? That's my book. It's like, if you believe a lie to be true, it becomes true to you, and you create a worldview around looking through the lens of that lie. And if you look through a broken lens, you're going to live a broken life.
Golly.
But
so he calls you and says, I want to offer you a long-term contract.
Yeah.
You're like, where'd I sign up?
Yeah. And I signed on the dotted line, and I spent 6 years in that industry, did over 1,000 movies. And I thought, like, while then in the industry, I'm like, well, if I become the most successful person in that industry, I'll feel like a successful person. And if I make enough money, the value that I don't feel that I have, it will be restored in my life. And I can tell you how many free throws Kobe Bryant missed when he scored 82. But just thinking like, okay, well, I'm going to track these metrics. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to become the best. And that is that's a God-given trait that I have, like regarding my personality. But again, like under the submission of Jesus, it's a beautiful thing. But looking at myself through the lens of my shame and my brokenness, it can be a very dangerous thing.
Under the lens of Jesus,
yeah,
man, it becomes a good thing, right?
Yeah. That achiever personality, like under the surrender submission of Jesus, it's a beautiful thing. But under the father of lies, it's a desperate thing.
Yeah. Well, tell me this. So man, I guess so at that time, 22 to 27, you're in this industry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So was it a slow out? Was it a moment out? How did you get out?
Yeah. So, I said, well, if I make $1 million, I'll feel a certain way. I did that. It didn't work. I said, if I become the most successful person in the industry, I'll feel a certain way. In 2012, I won Performer of the Year, and it didn't fill the void that I thought it would. So anxiety amplified, depression deepened, and I thought, well, I've got this tangible, theoretical scarlet letter, because my greatest mistakes have a tangible expression and they're accessible to any and everyone in the world.
Wow.
So
oh my gosh,
I don't feel like I thought I would, and my greatest mistakes are for the world to see. So what's the point? I've ruined my life. So that caused me to distance myself from my family, because the way that this unfortunately works regarding pornography being attached to mental health is I start isolating myself because of my shame. And then I become my shame, and then I start to believe, well, I can't offer any value to the people closest to me and everyone that loved me enough to say, hey, I love you, but what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
You're better than this. Like, it was like I had a few fraternity brothers and my family saying, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, maybe I said it was cool. Like my fraternity brothers, like maybe I said it was cool like early on, but like, dude, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I pushed all those people away.
Absolutely.
So at this point in my life, this is like 2013. I haven't heard my real name in over a year, because I had pushed everyone away, and I'd completely isolated myself. So the only thing I did, I went to the gym, barbershop, grocery store, and went to set. And all those people were calling me by that pseudonym that I started going by. And I was flying back from Atlanta, kind of beautiful because I preached in Atlanta. I was flying back from Atlanta. Right, I preached at UGA this weekend.
Yeah, that's right, man.
But I was flying back, and I was like, okay, I've had enough. I'm gonna harm myself to the extent I don't live anymore.
Yeah.
And I made a very specific plan, and I got back, and I had this check in my pocket, and it was just like driving me crazy. And I took it out and I looked at it, and in that industry, on the memo of the check, they'll say what it's for, and they're almost like as an antagonistic.
Yeah.
Because like if I can manipulate you or make you feel bad about yourself, you're gonna
the enemy's sneaky.
Yeah, you're gonna question your worth.
Yeah.
So if you question your worth, you'll believe the only thing that I'm good for is the thing I'm ashamed of, and you'll disassociate any and everything else. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, but I guess I don't want to this money to go to waste. And if I die, then maybe whoever, like someone in my family, will get the money left in my bank account. I didn't know how it worked exactly, but that's what I assumed. So I go in the bank, and as I was thinking, like normally when I went to the bank, I would go ATM, Dropbox, mobile deposit, because I didn't want to hand the money to the person and them see, okay, you were paid for sex.
Right.
I wanted to no part of that. But on this day, that's exactly what I wanted. I needed someone to affirm the way that I thought about myself so I could do what I intended to do. I needed justification for what I was going to do. And I walk into the bank, and I slide the check across the counter, and this woman looks at it, and she asks for my account number. I give her, I swipe my card. She puts in the information. She hands in the receipt, and I go to walk out. And then as I'm pivoting away, she says, "Joshua, are you okay?"
No way.
Joshua, can I help you?
1 million cent, 1 million cent. Get untrained and equipped 100%. 1 million cent, 1 million cent. Get untrained and equipped like 100%.